Friday, you can do it. You can do it. Come on, here, I'll move these. You can make the jump. You can do it. Good, Milo, you made the jump. Aren't you a brave kitty? Milo has, he's unsure about, jumping on things because he has a short tail. Our theory, God, our theory is that he doesn't have great balance. I don't know if that's correct, but that's our theory. He used to, at a certain point, he lived with my parents, my mom and my dad. And my dad was delighted because he never got to have cats as a grown-up. He loved cats, but my mom hated all pets. And so, but we were there in between moves between California and coming back here. We stayed with mom and dad for a while. Milo loved dad, and he used to chug up and down the stairs after dad. And wherever dad went, Milo went. And dad always complained, though, that his tail was not proportionate. And I think it's true. I think that's part of the reason why Milo has some problems. Okay, it is Friday. Last day of the Mandalorian. I'm doing my best to avoid spoilers. Are you, Milo? Are you doing your best to avoid spoilers? Perf. Lester loves watches. I suggest a new series on Friday night at 7. Gosh darn it, Sebastian, episode 1, Tweezers. I think that'd be great. He loves being here. I feel so badly about, kicking him out, not letting him be here, but I can't work if he's around. But he comes in here and he gets on my bench and he horks stuff. Episode 2 would have been about him getting on my bench and getting an entire brand new bottle of Mobius 9010, brand new, and pouring it all over my workspace. Very sad. Okay, next one is from Duncan. Hi, Duncan. Okay, he was talking about, somebody asked me about what one of my untouched grails would be, and I said, a 6215 7000. 6215 7000 is the... Hang on a second. 6215 7000 is, the 300 meter diver, like the... Sorry, we had a crisis. Milo does what he does, which is rolls around in ecstasy and pushes everything over. In this case, he pushed over a soda. So I just had to clean everything up. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. 6215 7000. That design is a really early 300 meter diver, made in the late 60s. They weren't made for long. Seiko almost immediately changed them to being the 6159 7000. They looked more or less the same, but they had a completely different movement. And then, of course, both watches were more or less sort of reissued in the form of the Marine Master. So it's this watch, this slab case. Okay. I didn't know what this watch was, thus I had to look it up. Wow, they're not cheap. Here's the thing. It's so similar to your 6159 7000, which is gorgeous, by the way. Thank you. Would it make sense to have both? Ask Eric Strickland. He has both. Is one more beautiful, more significant, historic, a better watch? I wonder if the people that design these watches are still around. Cheers as always. Please stay warm, Duncan. Well, let's go back. It would make sense to have both if you wanted to have both and you had the money to have both, but you'd be talking $15,000, $20,000 worth of watches, 2 watches, maybe more. Is one more beautiful? The 6159 7000 and the 6159 7000/7001 basically have the same exact case. They more or less look the same. There is a variant of the 6215, the early one, that has a countdown bezel. Instead of going, 0, 10, and 10, 15, 20, etc., it starts at 50, 55, and it counts down. And they're kind of rare to see. So it's a rare sub-variant of a rarer watch. The dials are done slightly different. like with these, just like the 6105s or anything else like that, it's got the 12 marker with that little divided diddly thing, right? The 6215 doesn't have that. The whole thing is just an open marker and it's filled. And so it looks a little different. The markers are slightly different. Also, the lume that they used looks to be a tritium, and so it turns sort of a tan color, which I think is really kind of neat. More significant, it's the first of the 300-meter divers. Historic, same answer. A better watch. I have a real crazy soft spot for the 6200 family of movements. That's like 6205, 6206, 6216, 6218, that kind of stuff. They're, relatively speaking, they're slow movements. They might be 19,800 BPH, but I think they're 18,000 BPH. They're pretty slow, but they have a big balance, and they're fully jeweled. They're all metal, and they can, in good condition, they get fantastic amplitudes. And when you get really good steady amplitude, it's the foundation for a very good steady watch. Also, because it runs slower, this is my opinion, I'm not saying this is a fact. The 6159, the successor movement, is a high beat, and it blasts along. It's got a high strength mainspring, it's got the balance is much smaller, and it's really moving. And it takes a lot of force to keep that thing running. There's a lot of force that goes through the movement. And I don't know that it necessarily leads to more wear, but I mean, Seiko did jewel the upper and lower mainspring R reports because it's pushing so much power to get that little balance to move so quickly. 6.2 series, they don't do that. They don't have to. They're relatively slow with a big balance, and they have great positional accuracy. And the 6215, 6216s, they're fully jeweled. They're beautifully made. They have hacking. I think the only thing they're missing is hand winding. If they had hand winding, they'd be great. I don't know. I love them. I'd love to have one fully jeweled, because then I would be able to wear it and not worry about it. I do worry about the 6159 because there's so much power in there, and also they get real twitchy if the hairspring isn't straight, and I don't know. For me, it's less worry. I wonder if the people that design these watches are still around. That's a question for somebody else. I think the person who designed a lot of these things, like the dude that designed the 6105, I think he's still around. Somebody might be able to correct me on this. Next question, Alex R. Agree on the old Omega stuff being killer. Their own movements were a true work of art, and still are. Shame exhibition backs weren't a thing back then. Yeah, it is a shame. Water resistance. This was what the thing that made exhibition backs possible was, or much more easy to do, was the invention of the eye profile nylon gaskets, because then you can just have a pressing crystal. You don't have to have it screwed together or anything. It just friction keeps it in place. Unrelated question, but what's your and Sabrina's opinion on Boba Fett coming back? This is a Star Wars question. Well, it was teased a lot last season that he was going to be around there, and it was never confirmed that he died inside the Sarlacc. And of course, in the extended universe, he did survive. So, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm glad they gave him more. Though, of course, Jeremy Bulloch, who played the original Boba Fett, just died. He was just announced yesterday. This year, and David Prowse, gone to 2020, just the gift that keeps giving. Okay. Hi, Spencer, Sabrina. I wish she was here, well, she is, but she's upstairs. Watching your video today, and you mentioned the traditional automatic winding machines were too slow for charging kinetic watches. I'm a lab scientist, and we use a piece of equipment called an orbital shaker. I know it very well. Which is used to shake cell culture flasks, etc., in a horizontal circular pattern. It can be set anywhere from 0 to 250 or so RPM. They're expensive if you buy from Lab Supply store, but can be found on eBay for about $100 or even less. I would bet they'd be ideal for charging kinetics. Yeah, you know, I know about those, and I desperately wish I had one. My father, my dad, my dad was a microbiologist, and he was a big tenured dude at CSU here, microbiology department. And he had a gigantic lab that towards the end of his career didn't really get used that much, and at a certain point he was cleaning it out, so part of it could be used given somebody else who was doing real research, and he had all this equipment, tons and tons and tons of equipment, and he was like, well, you want any of these things? And I'm like, because they were all his and they were all paid for, and I was like, what am I going to do with this stuff? I mean, I was like, oh, I want it, but I didn't grab one, and I'm eternally annoyed. The only thing I did get is he gave me 2 of their beautiful metal and wood lab chairs, and I actually use them here in my office. He goes, well, they're just going to go in the demi dumpster. Well, Dad, then I'll grab it. My question is regarding the 7016 chronograph movement. You've said in the past that for the 6139, if the chronograph wheel is good, the chrono sweep will stop just before 12 when the watch powers down. Is this also the case with the 7016? I've noticed that while I see this with my 6139, I do not happen to see it with my 7016 Monaco. Thanks a bunch. I enjoy your videos. Best, Jason. The way it works, the 7016s, they're incremental. They don't have... What was that all about? So basically, you click the start button and they just start to run. They're not like a 6139 where they're like click, click, click. What's stopping at 6139 is it runs down to the point that it doesn't have the power to push the minute counter, intermediary and wheel over, because it's got a spring on it that stops it from turning, and so that resistance on that spring is enough to stop the whole thing cold if it's run down. Doesn't happen on 7016s because they don't do that. They don't stop in between. You're just engaging a different part of the train, and it just runs continuously. Still talking about kinetics. Ralph Phillips. I have an old Sharper Image Watchwinder model SI314, and that winds all my kinetic watches. Instead of moving slowly, it swings the watch back and forth. That's pretty cool. So that is a Sharper Image Watchwinder model SI314. So I guess I'll have to look for that. That's pretty cool. Thank you. Thank you. Neil Sengupta. I'm wearing my 6139 6005 yellow Pogue from June 1973 today. Question for next mail call. What is your opinion on 70s and 80s digital Seiko watches? Which is the best in your opinion? Can they be restored and serviced? Thanks for answering. All the best, Neil. Yeah, I mean, I can blather about it, but why don't I show you what's going on? Ooh, and a wrist check. Okay, so we're going to do wrist check, and then... Now, how should I do that? I want to answer your question, and then I'll come back, and then I'll do wrist check. Okay, what is my opinion of 70s and 80s LCD watches? And do we have, what's the other part of the question? Which is the best in your opinion? Can they be serviced and restored? Yes, they can be serviced and restored if you can find the parts. Best. Well, they're kind of all the same tech. Seiko did a bunch of different stuff with them. They had a lot of innovations. They, of course, invented the quartz LCD chronograph, and the LCD itself. They made them happen. It's extremely cool technology. The problem is that they're very prone to moisture damage. They're very, very prone to battery damage. And they just tend to just die and die and die. These are like this. Okay, this is an 0139. This is a cool watch. I like this watch. It took me... But there are no parts for these watches, okay? There are no parts for them. You can't find parts. Is that a good... Is that a good one? You LCD screens, circuits, they're all drained. It took me, this is probably built from 3 or 4 good watches, bad watches. And I got all the parts, and this one, it does work. It does work, but it'll only work if it stays cool. The moment it starts to heat up, if you're wearing it on your wrist, the moment you do that happens, then the watch all of a sudden will just simply, it starts losing all this time. It starts resetting. And I really like this. I like the size, and the numbers are nice and big. I'm annoyed. I'm looking for a battery for this. Hang on. So you can see it. But it because there are no spares and it just takes forever. Let's see. Maybe that ought to do her. And it takes forever. Come on. I mean, it's nice and big and legible. It takes forever to fix one of these things. And then, if something goes terribly wrong, there are no replacement parts. If you could get the parts, it'd be great, but Seiko hasn't made them forever. But they did some really cool stuff. This is one of my favorite ones. This is a world time. I have a brand new crystal for this, by the way. I'm missing this little panel right here. These are really cool because they have a couple different modes where you have time mode, just regular time, and it tells you the day of the week and everything. But then you can also look at all the different time zones. This is like a pilot style watch. Isn't that cool? There's your time zone. And it's an alarm. It's like a super cool world traveler watch. This is one of my favorites. But again, this is an H239 where you have, analog time, and then you have this lower screen which does all the different things that Seiko does. And like all these other models, it's like there are no parts. I must have, of this general movement family, I've probably owned 20 of them. And I've had 3 that I've managed to get working. They get water in them, or they have a battery leak, and then they just die. It's maddening. I have not one but 2 of these. These are JDM. Really nice condition. They have they're folded link bracelets, but they've got some nice details on them, like this nice little machining on the edge. Yeah, look, it even has the remains of the JDM resizing instructions. That's what that is. It's kanji. Somebody bought this. But look, this one has almost no miles on it, but it's got this, like, the LCD screen has started getting this rainbow on it, which is unfortunate. I do have a second one that's got, I think, a perfect LCD screen. If I wanted to, I could make one good one out of both of these. I don't think this one. Oh, look at that. Look at the Japanese resizing instructions there. That's nice. See? And it tells you how to make the bracelet bigger or smaller. This might be the one that I got at that estate sale. I'm not quite sure where this one came from. One of my favorites is the General Steve Jobs model. That's the M159. Again, and this one took me probably 4 different watches to get enough parts to make it so that it would work and behave. But these were expensive in their day. I mean, these cost a lot more money than like the equivalent Rolex of their day. They were not cheap at all. And Seiko really put their back in with these beautiful, beautiful bracelets. And they really worked on the case finishing and everything. It's a nice watch. But my favorite one of the LCDs is actually the Lemon Drop. Seiko pulled out the stops. These were super expensive in their day. Look at the bracelets. Solid milled stainless. Solid cases. This one's pretty beat up. The bracelet is really, really, really short. And it works perfectly. I was actually able to get enough parts to make one of these work. But the the screen is really dark. It's really hard to see. I think because the polarizing filter is jacked up and there's just no place to get a circuit. If somebody has one of these that is totally, totally dead, like the movement's destroyed, but you have the LCD screen and it looks like it might be good, and you have more links for the bracelet, please let me know. I'd love to have one of these that I could wear. I just think it's really cool. I love the yellow color. And these were really expensive in their day, and they're really expensive now. But it's just, I have so many of, look at all this stuff. These are all ones that I got for almost nothing because they were all destroyed. I actually am sort of able to get this one running. Sort of, but it had pretty major acid damage. They're just, you know, it's a really cool technology, but it's not durable. I don't know. That's it. I wish I had the right screen and everything for this so I could wear this. This is such a cool watch. It's a little more worn than I like, but man, the quality's great. Okay. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. Wasn't too much of an info dump. Now, let's do wrist check. Okay, a wrist check. This has been a year with a lot of watches. But this one has to be a candidate for one of my favorite pickups. So this is a Slim Case 6309 7290. These are, it's not that they're rare, it's that they were made for a pretty short period of time. And they tended to get beaten to death. And with, well over a decade now of people wanting the cushion case, the big ones, these slim case ones sort of got the, short end of the stick. So people didn't really think about them too much. They weren't really worth a whole lot, and they weren't saved. Now, a ton of them were modded. But this one's completely original. And I just love it. And it's in such good condition that the loom still glows. But the coolest, oh, hi Milo. Oh, Milo, stop it. The coolest thing is this beautifully faded bezel. I'm trying to think if you can see it. It fades from black to like blue. It's just so pretty. It's so unique. The watch, somebody wore it a lot, but they never abused it. It's just a beautiful watch. You just never see them like this. And it was so nice and original that when I restored this, I resisted the urge to do any cool stuff like putting a hacking lever in it or anything else like that. It's got the lower mainspring arbor jewel, but that's it. I just think it's so pretty, and I love the fade on the bezel. Super cool. It's just a lovely watch. I remember 6, 7, 8 years ago, somebody came across, they picked up, I forget who did it, and I forget where they found them, but they got like 3 of these, and they were literally brand new. Like they had never been worn, never been sold. They came out of like a defunct jewelry store or something. And the guy wanted $250 a piece. And people were like, are you nuts for a Slim Case 6309? It's great that it's brand new old stock. It doesn't mean anybody wants one. Boy, man, if you had those today. And you never see them when they're in really nice condition. They're almost always destroyed. Okay. Ivan Mejia? Regarding one of the viewers' questions about why so many bullheads are in South America, I live in Colombia, and the market here is flooded with vintage Seiko, Orient, and Citizen. Extremely popular brands here. Like the vintage ones, like vintage Seiko. Depending on if you wanted to do it, if they're down there and they're in good condition, like especially, vintage Seiko chronographs and divers and stuff. If you can buy them for cheap enough, ship them up here. We'll sell them. People would be perfectly happy about that. Let's get them up here. But that's very good to know. That's very good to know. I always wanted to go to Colombia. I don't know. One of these days when the kids are older, I would love to go through and visit different places in Central and South America. I think that would be really cool. Speedwolf. Oh, this was a comment on the review of one of the new 62 MASs. Mine was an SPB 147. Great review. I like this watch, but I can't get past the wide insert, especially after seeing it beside both an original 62 MAS and the SLA 017. Yeah, that is the thing. The original 62 MAS had that slim. What are you doing? It had that slim insert, and it just made a lovely balance. I like the way the SPB 147 looks, and actually I like the wide insert. What's interesting to me is that Seiko came out with this line of watches, some limited edition, some not, and they were almost a perfect. I was like, gosh, those look awfully familiar, but not because they look like a vintage Seiko, because they looked darn near exactly what Steve Laughlin did with his more recent Raven watches, his Raven dive watches, so much so that it looked like Seiko had looked at his production and taken notes and duplicated it. I don't know that's what's happened, but I looked at the watch, and part of the reason that it didn't really charm me too much was that I looked at it and I'm like, it's kind of it's a riff on Seiko's own design, but Stephen Laughlin at Raven Watches did this first. So that's one of those things. I need to call him actually. I keep meaning to. I just hate being on the phone, but I do need to call him. Synthfrost. Glad to see Vostok on the channel. Love those old Kommandierskis. I have a few of them and a newer Amphibia. There's something to them that's unique, and they can be found for real cheap. Do I have it up here? I had to reorganize all my watches. I think it's actually upstairs. I've always had a real soft spot for those Russian dive watches. My brother-in-law, he lived and worked in Moscow for many decades, so I actually, whenever presents would come from him or any of that kind of stuff, those watches would always come, and we had a number of them. And I actually went to Moscow in the late 90s, and we went to this huge flea market north of Moscow, and you could get them, gosh, for just nothing. And aesthetically, I do like them. I think they're pretty, I don't know, like I said, I think many of their designs are good. There's one that they have that's an actual Soviet design, and it's like a cushion case design with a round bezel, but the dial is tritium lume, like a 369, or maybe it's a 6912, but it's really cool. I wish they made them more, not with plated cases, but all stainless steel. I don't know, I just think they're neat. Tony L. Again, about the Vostok. Yours is a post-Soviet watch made sometime in the 90s. The dial was originally a deep blue that tends to fade like yours. Water resistance was advertised at 5 bar when new, so not exactly a diver. Yeah, that makes it kind of water absorbent more than water resistant. The movement was a joint venture development between Raketa and Vostok in the early 1970s and is still made today in both date and no-date versions. For $28, you can get a really good example in Russia, and they tend to run fine despite poor quality control in the 90s. Thanks for sharing. Well, that's the thing. My opinion of these watches is formed in part from all that production from the late 80s and mostly from the 90s, because that's when they were still, all of those people, my brother-in-law and his family were all over in Moscow. And so I would get these watches and they would look fine, but they wouldn't run but for a couple of weeks and then they die. But this was during the currency crisis, after the fall of communism, and with all the trouble that was happening around, like Yeltsin and all that stuff. So it was a rough time. I loved the way they looked. I wish I still had a number of those watches, because I would go into them and repair one again and just see how they were doing. The movement is solid. I don't know what could have been wrong with those watches, but whatever. Jim Canataro, this needs to be a new series. Spencer services a random cheap mechanical watch. Love it. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. I just couldn't sleep. Things have been, Serena doesn't feel well, and so, I don't know, I'm just not getting the sleep I'm supposed to, and I have a lot of time to kill. And so working on watches is fun. But I will, if people like that kind of thing, I mean, I can, believe you me, I have watches. I can find watches, maybe it's an excuse for me to find watches that have been sitting for a long time, that I've had the urge to do something with, but never have. You know, somebody actually asked to buy my Vostok, the one that I did in that video last week. And I told the guy, I'm like, I haven't the foggiest idea what in the world to charge for it. I mean, because, the watch itself, I think, literally cost me $28. The restoration at shop rates would be the restoration at shop rates, but it's still a huge, many times the actual value of the watch. I can't imagine how I would, with a straight face, charge somebody for that, even though the work was legitimate. Steve Wilkinson. I grew up with a Wilkinson. He was on the last submarine in the U.S. Navy that was a diesel boat, and they were cruising on the surface with the top hatch open, the conning tower and everything was open, and they got slapped with I think a rogue wave, and it pushed the nose of the sub down, and the sub was submersed with the top open. They survived. They managed to get the sub back up to the top, but a number of people lost their lives in that one. But the last diesel sub, and I remember Chris Wilkinson, he specifically went into the Navy and specifically went into submarines specifically so he could be on a diesel sub, like it was in the old days. He didn't want to go nuclear. He wanted the World War II experience. Chris Bannister. Oh, whoops, I never finished Steve Wilkinson's question. Heck, I never even read it. Hi, Spencer. It is very common for these watches to have movements replaced when they go bad, as they are inexpensive and labor for repair would cost significantly more. Of course, if you have a watch like mine that was given to me by my son for my birthday last year, the movement will always be repaired and not replaced. Mine is a 31 jewel automatic and manual wind amphibious scuba dude. There's a frogman on the dial with the same bezel as yours, and I absolutely love it. Thank you for the great video. Cheers. Yeah, that's reasonable. I always, when people send me watches and they're like, well, I want to get this restored. When I look at it and it's, restoration is significantly more than what the watch itself is worth. And I always say, how much sentimental value do you have built into this thing? Because you're not going to get your money back out with a service. You're not going to be able to get that money back. You're going to bring it back and you'll be able to wear the watch. But if you were ever planning to flip it, not a good investment. Chris Bannister. Great fun, Mr. Klein. You don't have to call me Mr. Klein. Spencer's fine. I've been watching and listening to you for about 3 years. Thank you. And I've never once noticed you say K. Well, that's good. I noticed and it was annoying the shit out of me. Ooh, bad language. Not even when you were getting aggravated by it, just never noticed. Hope that makes you feel a little better, and I love the watch. I feel more confident now about servicing some of my Vostoks. They're good movements. They're solid. I only wish that the one I had was automatic, simply because I really prefer automatic watches. Straight hand wind isn't really my thing. Stachu Stiwikowski. I really hope that I got that right. So again, talking about the Vostok. Hey, so what do you think about this movement? Sadly, this is one of the worst Vostoks. You should try the 22mm family, which is 18 joules. You can get those with hacking and with Geneva striping. Or if you want to try working one of the greatest Russian movements, you can buy a Pobeda 2602 from the first half of the 50s. Very beautiful old school workhorse. I just don't know much about Soviet watchmaking. The only thing I really knew beyond what I've already mentioned about Soviet watchmaking was that, oh man, one of the classic American watch factories. Illinois? No, it wasn't Illinois, but one of those big pocket watch companies from the late 1800s, early 1900s. The Soviets bought the entire factory and they moved the whole thing to Russia, and it became, I think, watch factory number 3 or something. And they produced that movement for a very, very long time. Let's see. Yeah, but I looked at somebody else's recommended different Vostoks as well, and I looked at them, and they're pretty cool. There's some pilot ones that I really dig. Okay. Okay. 7RS Lender. 7ers Lender? 7er Slender? If it works, it ain't stupid. Sums up the Vostok, pretty much all of them. I love that you can still get these new and very affordable fun watches. Just my 2 cents. By the way, did you know that Bill Murray did wear a Vostok 520526 in the movie Life Aquatic? And since then, the model is nicknamed the Zissou after Murray's character, Steve Zissou. I bet you did know that. No, as I said, actually I didn't know that. The Life Aquatic, I like Bill Murray. And the whole idea seems fun to me. I never got around to watching the movie. I knew a lot of people that loved the soundtrack. And I knew a number of people that loved the movie. I don't know, for some reason I just never made it a priority to watch. But I am going to learn more about them. Andrew W. Greetings, Comrade Klein. Great work on that old Vostok. I have a question about hacking on a decadent Western wristwatch for this week's mail call. Oris released a new movement a few weeks ago, which has an issue where the minute hand moves when the crown is moved in and out and back from hacking position, making it hard to accurately set the watch. My 6105 also has a similar issue. When pushing the crown back, the minute hand seems to sometimes move forward by about half a minute. What do you think generally might cause this issue? When I see something like that in a 6105 or a 6309 or a 7548, typically what I find is that the friction connection between the center wheel pinion and the cannon pinion is not strong. That thing should hold firmly enough that when you push it in, if you accidentally have a little bit of tightness, turningness, you're not going to necessarily see a hand jump like that. But if the cannon pinion is really worn, if it's kind of slippy, like if you're setting the time and there's not much resistance, then even the smallest amount of shear force when you're pushing that crown in will translate to turning the minute wheel, which will turn the cannon pinion, which then turns the minute hand because that's sitting on top of there. That's what I would think. But this is a brand new movement for Oris. I don't know what the Oris movements look like. In the case of the new Oris movement, the people who reviewed it think it's something to do with having twin barrels and the gears not meshing properly. But I thought hacking normally works by friction when a lever contacts the balance wheel. Yeah, all this stuff is different things. Twin barrels, I don't know how that would affect the position of the cannon pinion, which is what the minute hand sits on. Gears not meshing properly. Typically hacking, yes, what it does is it either stops the balance or it'll hit it stops like the escape wheel or the third wheel or something else like that. So it'll go and it comes in and then stops it. I don't know. I'd have to see it. I don't know anything about the movement in the Oris. But if I saw the behavior you're talking about in a 6105, I would assume it was a worn cannon pinion. Yeah, with the Oris, I mean, I have no idea. Do they have a direct seconds drive? Do they have an indirect drive? How are they set up? How are they set up? DMITS 22. I have a few Vostoks, open them, regulate them at 42 degrees indeed. Oh yeah, that works. By the way, 42 is great. And they are phenomenal. SKX bezels, swap with them in case you wanted to know. It never would have occurred to me to think about that. The crown is designed to wiggle that way so a whack won't break it off. They are insanely waterproof since the K-spec design allows for increased depth pressure equaling increased water resistance. The only problem is that when you buy one, you end up buying 10, or in my case, more. Then you get stuck looking and buying Polyots and Rakettas. It's a vicious circle. There are so many of these Russian watches on eBay. There are so many of them. Like, I bought this wreck that I restored for 28 bucks because I happened to come across it on eBay, and I'm like, 28 bucks for a dive watch? Heck yes. And I bought it without doing any research, and then I realized that that was the price one can pay for one of these in really nice condition. It's unbelievable how cheap they are. They're an amazing value for money. They really are. Randy Allen. More about the Vostok. Actually, I see this video as more of a Christmas present than a party. Okay? Thanks so much for doing this in an extended format, no less. Sabrina was like, your video is 97 minutes long. No, who's going to watch that? And I was like, I don't know. Who's going to watch 97 minutes of me humming in the middle of the night, rebuilding a Russian watch? Anyway, I've been waiting to see someone do a Vostok service video, and I was so pleased it was you. Well, I'm glad. Nobody else shows the same kind of mechanical sympathy to the watches they work on regardless of the price than you do. That's a huge compliment. I take that very seriously, and I was very pleased to read that. Thank you. That makes me feel very, very good. I've always loved bringing back machines and, giving them back the semblance of life and existence, and nothing. There are lots of things that make me sad, but one of the things that makes me sad is seeing a neglected and abused machine when it can, when it can be returned to service. So money is kind of abstract to me, but the watches are real. In my opinion, these Vostoks are little gems in the rough. Yes, I know some of them come out with flaws, but overall they represent the Russian philosophy of design for task and purpose without wasteful extravagance. They're like little Kalishnikovs or MiG-29s. As you mentioned, the compressing case design, novel two-piece caseback. You see? Let's see. Novel two-piece caseback and wobbly crown are ingenious solutions the designers came up with to overcome their limited resources. Yes, I have two of them, and they get the most wear time of my watches because they're so simple and easy to live with. As you know, all manner of different bezels, dials, hands, straps, or bracelets are available from the factory store Meranom, M-E-R-A-N-O-M, Meranom, at very reasonable prices. A new movement is about 40, so a lot of people just replace the movement instead of servicing it. So I was really happy to see you go through one. Thanks again, and best wishes to you and your family for the holidays. Cheers. Thank you, Randy Allen. Yeah, I did look at that website, and they have a lot of parts, and they have a lot of watches. I don't know. The last thing I need is another watch obsession, but it's nice to know there's an affordable one out there. And I would think, actually, with these Russian watches being so inexpensive and sort of old school designs, really, but not bad old school designs, they would be a good option for people to learn basic watch work because they're inexpensive. You can buy a brand new movement for not a lot of money. If you buy one that's dead and you manage to kill it, well, it's already dead. What was the worst thing that was going to happen? That would be a good thing. Maybe going forward, when people ask me that question, I'll say instead of working on a Seiko, you could work on one of these Russian ones, because the basic theories are all pretty much the same. At a certain point, if you pull out to a macro view, pull back far enough, all watches are watches for a given value of watch. But I mean, the basic same techniques and approach function. everything else just becomes sort of fine details, differentiations. Speedy Paul. Loved the video, Spencer. Great job. Well, thank you. I wonder what would cause the blue dial to go bronzy like that. UV, man. UV comes in and it hits the surface and it breaks up the molecules, the chain molecules that absorbed the wavelengths of color except for blue, and it broke those up, and so it didn't reflect blue anymore and absorb the blue, and you come to this clear color. I think the Russians put more effort into the movements than the dials. Oh yes. Some fiddly diddly bits, no doubt. Please do more cheapo watches. Some, as you say, are surprisingly well made. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of the American post-war watches, like in the 40s and the 50s, like the Bullovas, especially Bullovas and Caravel, they had beautiful, beautiful movements. Sometimes American made. Like the 11 AC is a Bulova movement. I have a Bulova dress watch that I got, and it's just such a sweet, elegant design, and the movements are really nice. So, yeah, there's all kinds of treasures out there. John Boy of Alaska. Hello, Mr. Boyarski. Oh, God, I've got your H357 here. I'm just so burned out. I'm so sorry. It's on my repair shelf. God, it's been a long couple of years. I haven't taken any work for so long, and I'm just like, we haven't taken a vacation in 2.5 years. And then this Corona stuff, we haven't left the house. And it's just like, I'm burned out. I'm a little burned out. Anyway, John Boy of Alaska. Okay, the dial lacquer does craze gorgeously. The crown wobbles as crown stem protection. The bezel is bidirectional friction fit with a little copper spring. I saw that. Don't worry about breaking parts. The 2414 movement parts are all over the place. These are cool little movements. Classic Soviet engineering. Runs well enough forever. Built like tank. From my research, you've got the old dial font, probably 80s or early 90s, Soviet-made parts, maybe put together in the Soviet era or just afterwards. That would make sense to me. I mean, I remember, again, my brother-in-law, my sister, and kids and stuff, they lived over there when all that stuff went down. And he was employed by a non-Russian petrochemical company. He was one of their top people, and so money was not a problem for them. And they tended to do. At that point, when things were going really south, they worked almost entirely in hard currency, American hard currency. But boy, if you were Russian at that time, man, things were rough. And even when I went there in the later 90s, things were rough. And so, I mean, who knows? They were cranking out whatever they could to make any hard currency they could. Yeah, it was trippy living in Moscow with them because they had money. I didn't live in Moscow when I was visiting with them, but they could go to, there was a specific grocery store that they went to that had Western foods that was, basically it was Western hard currency only. And so like embassy people would go there and stuff like that, or oligarchs, and you could buy pretty much whatever you wanted, all the American food you could imagine. Russians didn't get to go there because they didn't have the hard currency. I don't know, it's tough. It's tough. I remember we went to this like monument park sort of in Russia, but it was a whole series of different buildings, almost like sort of like the Smithsonian, different buildings, different museum things. But since the collapse, it was crazy. It was almost like a Mad Max thing. Like there was one pavilion, it was a big round pavilion, and it was, again, these were supposed to be like cultural and museum displays about the greatness of the Soviet Union. And one of these round buildings, I don't remember what it was originally for, but it was a lovely building, but it had been turned into a giant open-air meat market. Like, imagine one of the main museum buildings at the Smithsonian turning into a flea market. It would be like that. There was another building, same thing, and it was really kind of flea markety, but it had been a building dedicated to their Soviet space program, and it was just filled with these squatters and junk. And my brother-in-law's it was his driver or one of his bodyguards, I don't remember which, and he was telling me about it, and it was so sad, really, because he was like, when I was a kid and we used to come here, and it made me so proud, and look at all this stuff, with the Soviet space program, and look at this now. And it's just, I really honestly did feel bad for him at the time. I can't even imagine. Blair Watch Project. Hey Spencer, I find it interesting that you went all the way to the dial without dropping the balance. I assume you were pretty certain or just not concerned about potential issues to be addressed in the train. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the right way to do it, and I do this a lot on watches with a lot more complicated elements, especially on the calendar side, like in a chronograph. You want to drop the balance. Basically, folks, you want to take a watch, service a watch, build the train, drop the balance, and then you don't have anything else in the watch, so you can just see the pure numbers without having to worry if there's a problem about wondering where that problem might come from. It makes it much easier to see how the movement came out. But that Vostok, when I first got the train on, after I corrected myself for which was supposed to go on first, the barrel bridge or the train bridge, when I got the train bridge on and I just touched it and the wheels turned and they slowed on their own, and so they didn't have a lot of resistance and they flowed smoothly, I didn't think there was going to be any problems. It didn't even occur to me. When I'm doing like a 6138, or especially when I'm doing something like a, mega chronograph or something else like that, a Landeron chronograph, the chronograph stuff I always add at the way end first. I'll get the train running and do it right. Kevin C. I have an Invicta with an NE88 automatic chronograph, basically the same movement, just rebranded for third-party sellers. Oh yeah, so NE, the 88, so that's that mechanical chronograph, which is a chronograph unit module bolted on the front of a 7000 series. I did not know that they sold them independently. If I had my ducks in a row, I'd buy 20 or 30 of those movements and talk with somebody who's a design person and produce a watch. That'd be fun. Ooh. Oh, another from Mr. John Boy of Alaska. Hello Spencer, I have a question for this week's video. How in the HE double hockey sticks do you put in a Seiko crystal with the tension ring? I've cracked or broken 3 of them now and it's getting expensive. I tried pressing with a crystal press using several different sizes of die. I've tried the compression style with million little feet that compress on the sides of the crystals. Tried an old school plier style that compresses the side and the middle. No matter what, they always start to seat crooked and then start to crack. I cannot get it to sit straight long enough to get the case in place straight and to get a straight push on the crystal. This is driving me crazy and I'm tired of spending money on crystals that I will break. Now these are the generic 310T crystals, not the Seiko specific ones, thanks. Frustrated up in the frozen wastes of Hoth. Okay, you said generic crystal, right? Not Seiko branded. Which generic? Are you talking GS crystals? Are they, who's making them? Are they Sternkreuz or GS or who else makes them? I have a lot of faith in GS products. There is this funky thing though. They tend to make their crystal versions. GS Crystals is one of the oldest crystal companies in the world. They're in Rochester, New York. And they make generic versions of an unbelievable range of 20th century watches, including tons of Seiko ones. What I find, I noticed this first. Okay, say you've got a, well, you know what? How about this? I'll just talk about it really quick. Okay. So, talking about crystals. So you said to use generic. I'm assuming you might be using GS, because they're one of the main ones that get done. The other one is, the other generic crystal that I'm familiar with is, of course, Sternkreuz. Now, Sternkreuz comes from Germany. They're great great quality, and they come with their tension rings. I've never had a Sternkreuz fail on me. They're beautifully made, they're precise, and they drop right in. I've had, and I say this, I don't say this lightly, I love GS. The thing with GS is you gotta kind of fit with it. So these are the same crystal. This is the Seiko original 310 T19 ANSO, and that is what this one is as well. But you'll notice that these, according to GS themselves, this is a replacement for multiples, T19, T21, T15. So it's kind of loosey-goosey. The biggest deal with these that I have found, like say you got your original crystal in your original watch, like here, okay. This is a 61, is this a 6105 case? I found this the other day. I was like, I should clean this. 6106 7000. Okay, well, whatever. It's in the late 60s. So here's your clean, beaten up case. There's the original crystal, and there's your tension ring. What you're supposed to do, what they always say, okay, well, you're going to want to put in your Sternkreuz thing, but your Sternkreuz, God darn it. Sorry. Unlike Sternkreuz, GS crystals do not come with a tension ring. And so what they're always saying is, oh, well, what you got to do is you got to pull the original Seiko tension ring and then use it in the new crystal. Okay, well, that's an interesting idea. The problem being is that a lot of times the original Seiko tension ring is not actually the right size to go in the GS crystal. Okay, well that's a bad... Are these the same? But what I will find, usually what happens, is that these rings, the genuine Seiko rings, are too big because the walls of the thickness of the crystal, the GS crystal, is thicker than the Seiko original material strength, perhaps. So what I usually find I have to do with these is I have to actually get my Dremel, and I sit this thing on my hand here, and I let the Dremel turn and grind, and it spins this on my finger like this, and I take down the outside diameter so that it's not as hard to fit into the crystal. Because I have found that when I'm doing what you're doing, which is that I'm trying to, put a GS crystal in, if that ring is too big, it doesn't give it any flex for the crystal to get any smaller, and you try to push it in and it'll catch, and before you know it, it snaps. And believe me, I've snapped a lot of crystals. So again, the big thing is you got to take the outer diameter of that tension ring and shrink it so that it's not as hardcore as it should be. I mean, like this, there's another genuine Seiko crystal. This one I pulled out. This is out of a front-loading 25 joule 6106 from February 69. And this, it's not so tight that you can't compress a little bit and get it out. If the tension ring is too tight, you don't have any room to fiddle, don't have any room to play. Let's see how these go together. Would you come out? Okay, so that's the genuine one, T19. That's the real deal. Here's the GS equivalent. Look at that. They look close. They're not perfect. The bevel on the genuine one is different. This is just more generic. Okay, so let's pull this tension ring and try to put it in that. Come on. Don't fight me. Come on. There we go. Okay, so that that is the genuine Seiko ring. This is the GS crystal. And it doesn't, yeah, it's too big. It doesn't want to go in. Now, I could force that. I could force it, but then when I tried to seat that, it would get all jacked up. So what I would need to do in order to make this work is, again, reduce the outside diameter and then try it. If I just force that in there, it absolutely would not work. God, man, I tell you. See? And it drops perfectly in there, but it won't go into that one. So there you go. You've got to always sort of have a feel for it and try to, I don't know, it's always nerve-wracking. I swear, whenever I have to drop one of these, I'm always like, I'm waiting for disaster. And typically disaster comes. That's about it. So I don't have a good answer. I mean, my trick will work. Again, you can't force them. And if it's not dropping in, you can't force it. I don't know. It's funky. Pesky Kiwi. The case on the Stargate is beautiful. The watch is utterly ruined by the too big bezel, horrible index ring, and awful hands. I don't think there's anything wrong with the index ring. Index ring on mine looks awesome. Isn't that nice looking? My index ring is fine. The Stargate bezel was one that it's controversial. If it had a standard style Seiko bezel, I wonder how that would look. I was cool on the handset as well. I've come to appreciate them because, Seiko doesn't really use this handset too much anymore. I do remember, though, I will say, one of these, if you put a Marine Master set of hands on these, it looks perfect, and it's what Seiko should have done. And in fact, if they had a standard bezel on this and the Marine Master style handset, the watch would just be a world beater. My only real gripe is I wish they hadn't gone with 22 millimeters on the lugs. I wish they'd gone with 20, if not flat out 19, but 20 would have been fine. Because then if they had 20, you could see the inspiration for the case lines. It would make more sense. I don't know. I think Seiko did a great job. There are things I would change, but what are you going to do? Okay. Last question. RG. Hi, Spencer. It turns out that Patek Philippe, FP Journe, Lang & Son, and Jaeger-LeCoultre do actually use unidirectional rotors in most of their current calibers. Okay. As far as I understand, their view of high efficiency is based on A, lower parts wear, and B, fewer parts, saving more room for other complications. There's no way to have fewer parts than a Seiko Magic Lever system, as far as I understand it. You don't have to have reversing wheels. You don't have all those different gears. You don't have the jeweling that's involved with it. You have the weight. You have the ball bearings, the framework, and that turns the first reduction wheel. And the reduction wheel moves the paw lever like this, and the paw lever goes to that secondary reduction wheel, which goes to the ratchet, and that's it. It's really simple, really, really, really bulletproof. Anyway, my question today is about Seiko. How hard is it to service a spring drive movement compared to the traditional Seiko's high-end mechanical and quartz calibers? Thanks and have a great weekend. I have no idea. FedEx is here. I have no idea. I've never owned a spring drive. I've only looked at one personally a few times. I've handled one a couple of times. I've never researched the technical guides of the movement. The thing that would be funky about it is you have a CMOS in there. You've got to think about circuits and stuff like that because it's going to be calculating accuracy as it's running, measuring the speed of the balance. I don't know. I'm assuming that it would have regular kinds of jeweling because you have a regular train and you're going to have Diashock settings. I don't know. I'd have to see one. I wish they weren't so god darn expensive. They shouldn't be so god darn expensive. They should be cheaper. They really should. Don't you think? Don't you think? It's ridiculous. Anyway, I've never owned one. Well, folks, that's it for Friday. Milo's given up trying to assault me. It's the finale of Mandalorian. We're almost at the holidays, almost at Christmas. Things are winding down. I don't know. So, in conclusion, I'm glad everybody enjoyed the Vostok video. It was not something I planned ahead, because planning ahead is something that happens to other people. I just make my way through life. But I will go and I will find another cheap watch and maybe we'll restore it. Oh, FedEx is not coming here. Just drove down the street. Okay, well, that's good. Thanks, folks, for all your questions and your time and everything else like that. And we'll see you folks later. Bye.